Well, right now, world leaders are gathering at the annual NATO Summit in Lithuania. Many topics will be discussed, but the main focus will be on Russia and the threat it poses to Eastern Europe. President Biden is expected to meet with Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky tomorrow, and this comes amid Turkey's decision to support Sweden's bid to join the military alliance after previously holding up its application. Mr. Biden applauded NATO's continuing expansion.
Adding Finland and Sweden to NATO is consequential, and your leadership really matters. And we agree on the language that you proposed relative to the future of Ukraine being able to join NATO, and we're looking for a continued united NATO. They've heard me say, my American president heard me say many times, I still think that President Putin thinks the way he succeeds is to break NATO. Not going to do that.
CBS News Chief White House correspondent Nancy Cordes is following all of this for us from the Lithuanian capital. Good to see you again, Nancy. NATO leaders have been promising to unveil a new path for NATO membership for Ukraine. At this summit. Now, this is something that Ukraine had been asking for even prior to Russia's invasion, and there were a number of issues, corruption being one of them. Now, Ukraine's in the middle of a war. Ukraine's president is not happy about, I guess, what you could call almost slow rolling a plan. What's going on?
Right. So Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, is heading here to the NATO summit. He's going to be meeting with these leaders, and he dropped a rhetorical bomb on them a short time ago. He said that he is outraged by what he's hearing about the communique that is being put together, the part of the communique that refers to the future for Ukraine as a potential NATO member. And this is strategic on Zelensky's part. You know, putting these communiques together, it sounds like you're just issuing a piece of paper, but it's not easy. You need to get all 32 countries to sign off on it. So anything that NATO says about the pathway for Ukraine's NATO membership has to get unanimous support, or they can't say it. And clearly, haggling is taking place behind the scenes. You heard President Biden say there that he supports the proposal being put forth by NATO's Secretary General, but it's possible that other countries don't, or don't want to be quite as aggressive about the timeline for Ukraine's NATO membership, or who have any number of other issues with the proposal. And so Zelensky is putting pressure on them. He's saying that he thinks it's absurd and unprecedented to place new requirements on Ukraine for what it would need to do to become a member of NATO and get those protections that he's so desperately seeking once the war is over, without also at the same time laying out a clear timeline. That's something I asked the National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, about this morning, and he refused to put any kind of timeline. I said, could it be 5 years? Could it be 10 years after the war is over? He said they just don't want to put any kind of date on it. What they're looking for are some democratic reforms, and they're going to be more clear with Ukraine than they have been in the past about what exactly Ukraine needs to do to get there.
It certainly seems as if a number of Eastern European countries are supportive of Ukraine's bid to become a member of NATO. No surprise, they are in the shadow of Russia. They have a shared history in some cases with Russia. What is the counter argument? What is the argument on the other side? Countries that are concerned about being transparent about a clear timeline.
The counter argument is that if you make it too clear that, hey, once the war in Ukraine is over, then Ukraine will be able to join NATO after it does the following things, probably in a year or two. The concern is that that gives Vladimir Putin an incentive to drag this war out even longer, because that is something that he does not want to see, Ukraine joining NATO. And so they believe that keeping it vague is actually in Ukraine's interest. On the other hand, you've got Zelensky and some of the other Eastern European leaders here arguing that it shows weakness to Russia if you don't aggressively set out a path for Ukraine to actually become a NATO member. Now, they are doing things in the meantime to basically boost Ukraine's standing in this body. They're creating a whole new Ukraine Council. The first meeting will take place tomorrow. That's why Zelensky is coming here. It basically gives him the power to call a meeting of this NATO Ukraine Council whenever he feels that it's necessary. So this is definitely an upgrade. He's going to have more influence here at NATO. But for right now, most, if not all, NATO nations think that allowing Ukraine into the body right now would be a disaster because it would basically pit NATO directly against Russia in this war in Ukraine, something that the president has argued in the past would lead to World War III.
Nancy Cordes, thank you very much.